Welcome to the Biz Gone Social podcast. We help entrepreneurs navigate how to get known, get customers, and get the edge over their competition. Here is your host, Lorraine Duncan.
So here we are on the Biz Gone Social podcast, and I'm so glad to be here. And my promise to you, as always, is I want to give you a little bit of verbal caffeine that's going to energize your business. Because after all, don't you want to be the business everyone's talking about? I know I do. And welcome, Kerry-Ann Powell.
Lorraine, how are you? So good to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited about interviewing you today. And why don't you tell my audience a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So, you know how when you're running a business, regardless if it's a large, small, medium size, or if you've been in business for a while, it can sometimes feel like you're managing some sort of a chaotic tornado. So what we do at my company is that we help business owners run their business smoothly so they can eventually thrive in business and in life. So, you know, anything that makes them feel like they can run it smoothly, be confident, be sure about their numbers. That's what we do.
Awesome. And so what drew you to small and medium-sized businesses?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I guess maybe the passion that I have for small and medium-sized businesses come from, you know, early days when I was younger. And when I sort of looked and saw, like, you know, my dad's friends and the people that were sort of holding up our community, they were small and medium-sized business owners, right? And so I guess I sort of have sort of a nostalgia around the idea of what it means for someone to run a small and medium-sized company. But I guess as an adult now and someone that's in the business myself and also a strategist, you begin to look at the numbers. In the United States, over 90% of businesses are small and medium-sized. 2/3 of people work for a small and medium-sized company. In other parts of the world, Europe, Asia, Africa, it's like 99% of businesses are small. So when you start looking at the economy and look at, you know, employment and how our infrastructure, our taxes are coming about, they're coming from small and medium-sized businesses. But when it comes to the support that businesses get from whether it is our local governments or whether it comes from, you know, other sort of private entities, it's usually given to very large corporations. And so what I get passionate about is being able to provide strategies and tools and tactics so that people that own small and medium-sized companies can thrive just like the big dogs, because at some point, all the big companies were once small.
I love that. Recently, in fact, actually this morning, I talked to somebody from the Small Business Administration, and I never really had anything to do with the Small Business Administration. And I may have went to their website a couple times, but I actually went there again, and they have like such like neat little resources there about small business. And they have stuff for women. Mm-hmm. And it's really kind of an awesome place to be.
You know, it really is. And, you know, one of the things I think about the SBA is that they're like this sort of stealth kind of thing. They have so many resources, like you mentioned, but I really don't think we get enough funding. I don't think we get enough. And I also don't think they get enough. They advertise themselves enough to small business owners, because so many small business owners don't even think of the SBA when they're thinking about getting, you know, tactics, strategies, tools. They sort of overlook it, but it's a great agency. And I really love when I hear people talk about it.
Yeah. It's like the very first, I'm seriously, this morning I was talking to somebody, and that was the conversation. It was like so weird that, you know, when you shared what you do, I really made me think about, wow, that's because here's the thing. A lot of people, when they start a business for themselves, they actually don't really know how to do business. You know, there's a lot of things they're learning. There's some things that they need to have put into place, you know, maybe an entity or and really they have to really figure out like what their messaging is going to be. There's so much. I mean, I can go on and on. I mean, I get a headache just thinking about all the stuff I had to do to just be my business. So It's crazy, but you know what?
It is crazy. I think too, some people because most people right there, they have their, you know, I think it's the E-Myth, right? where Michael Gerber talks about this concept of people, they're really strong technicians. They're really strong technicians of whatever it is they're doing, whether it's, they're a lawyer or whether they are, a dentist or whether they, are really good at accounting, and that's their thing. And they put a shingle up and think, oh, well, I'm going to lean more on my skills as a technician. But the reality is the entrepreneurial, the manager side of things really needs to be strengthened, because there's so many things that are necessary to be done to make a business thrive that doesn't involve the technical part of what it is we do.
Yeah. Something that struck me about when I read a little bit about you is that you had said that you are a small business champion. And I really like that, because, we need people on our side. As a small business and a medium-sized business, we need someone that's going to come alongside us, hold our hand a little bit, point us in the right direction. So first of all, what is a small business champion and why do you believe that you are one?
Well, I do believe that a small business champion is anyone that really believes in the value of small businesses and medium-sized businesses in the economy, recognizes the strength and the power that those particular businesses have and can continue to have in making sure that our communities and our nation's economies are going well. I also think it's if you see that not just the small business as kind of like a subpar entity, but that it is an entity that's providing services and products that are high level, high value. It just so happens that they are at a different stage of their growth process than the larger Fortune 100 companies. So if you really believe that, then hey, guess what? You're a small business champion. And why do I think I am? I really spend all of my days on, talking to, helping small businesses with strategy, creating strategic plans with them, helping them look and see where the chaos is. Look, there's some realities to place. I know I sort of talked about the sort of managing a chaotic tornado and it sounds cute and whatever, but the reality is that there are many individuals who are running businesses, and whether or not it's a family business that was inherited to them from their, grandparents, whether they started this company on their own, whether or not they, bought it, whatever the case is, they're dealing with a lot of chaotic, or we call them symptoms of chaos, that they're dealing with on a regular basis. And it's not to be handled or looked at lightly. So when someone is dealing with, an owner is dealing with symptoms of chaos in their company, and they're wondering if they can hit payroll, or if they're going to have to close down shop, or if, what bill or what vendor is going to get paid because, cash flow is low this particular month, or, whatever the story is that's going on. And I can be there, and my team can be there to kind of say, hey, we're with you. We're going to get you through this, and you are going to thrive. You are going to hit those goals. You are going to scale. Then that to me is why I think I'm a champion for it, because I'm not just about the cute. I'm about let's get you there. And and again, a lot of the people that come to me are companies that really do want to last. So it's not necessarily sort of hobbies, or not people who are just kind of like, this is sort of my side thing, but I have a thing over here. No, it's like, if this company fails, all 50 of my employees and their families will not eat. So it's a different conversation, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why I think I'm a champion, because I'm all about getting them to the right place.
Yeah, that's scary. In my travels and in my different networking events I've been to and trade shows that I've done, I have had conversations with people that have honestly not know whether next, how they were going to meet payroll. And when I say that, man, that like, oh my gosh, how, it's like,
feast or famine is real. And a lot of times people think, oh, well, this is a small business problem. Not really, because literally I was talking to a colleague of mine the other day, and they're trying to bring me in, and this company has 250 employees, and they were late on payroll. So this is not a small business issue. Cash flow in a business, if a business fails, now I'm talking about any size business, small, medium, large, massive, the number one reason that businesses that fail is because of cash flow issues. That's 80%. So we're not talking, oh, well, cash flow is an issue that only, yes, there's a reality to face that the biggest focus that the stage of your business at, your biggest focus is around cash flow when you're in early days. However, the reality is that all businesses that fail, of those businesses, 80% fail because of cash flow.
Wow. Yeah. And I would believe that. Is there anything, if somebody out there right now is struggling with cash flow, is there, one thing that I always thought of, like, for instance, when the pandemic hit, I didn't know what was going to happen to my business. I didn't know what was going to happen to my husband's business. So the first thing I did is try to save money somewhere, meaning I looked at all my expenditures and see if there was something to be cut. And it's funny, when you look at your expenditures, you realize that, oh my gosh, why am I spending, I actually ended up saving $3,000 that year just in expenditures, like things that I downloaded, an app that I was paying for.
And why are you still paying for
it? It's only $9.99, but those $9.99 things
adds up.
But, and I don't know, I went to some seminar that they were talking about pivoting or something. That was the word of 2020.
Yes, it was.
And he said, look at, it's like, you don't know where your business is going to be. So try to make cash flow a little bit better by cutting out on some things that you really don't need. And I started on the personal level. So It was like, I had all these apps and I'm like thinking $9.99 here. I had like this super running app that was like $15.99 and I'm like, a month though, it adds up. I mean, it's little, I know, but it's like, hey, I think there's nobody that I would say no to saving $3,000 a year.
Right, exactly.
Seriously, that's a vacation. It's
that's
like
a vacation, exactly.
So, it's interesting. You come from a very interesting background. You were an attorney, a lobbyist, fundraiser. So tell me a little bit, how did you end up, like, for instance, I probably would have stopped at an attorney, but I've heard many stories of attorneys going into their own businesses. So how did you get from being an attorney to where you are today?
Yeah, it's really actually funny because I was an attorney and a lobbyist in Washington. But before I became an attorney, right out of an undergrad, I cut my teeth as a fundraiser, high we call high ticket or high priced fundraising, so very large sums of money. And so I learned how to fundraise. I did that for a number of years, 3 years before I went to law school. And then when I went to law school, I was in Washington. I was a practicing attorney, and then I was also a lobbyist. Well, it just so happened that while I was doing that, one of my really good friends sent me a message like, hey, do you know they're building a Martin Luther King Memorial in Washington, D.C.? I said, I had no idea. And so, it's on the National Mall, really, really big international project. And she's like, well, they're looking for someone to fundraise. I said, well, goodness gracious. So anyway, I went in, I put my hat in the ring, and I eventually became the head of fundraising for the project. It was $120 million project. It's like, oh, I'll do that for a couple of years and then head back to law. Well, haven't been back, but but what was interesting was, and this is what is a common theme and thread through all of my career when I was right out of college doing professional fundraising, when I was practicing as a lawyer and as a lobbyist, and then back to fundraising, was that I was always leading developments of strategy. So whether it was developing a strategic plan for a large organization, whether it was developing a strategic plan for one department, or whether it was, looking at how you're going to execute that strategic plan. So that is a skill set that I developed very, very early on in my career. And so when I finished the memorial, there were folks who were like, hey, Kerry-Ann, can you come in and help our organization and our board of directors do strategic planning? And by the way, can you also help us create execution plans in order to make sure that we are actually executing? Because, the number one reason why strategic plans don't work is because of the execution. So that's what I started to do initially in my business, was just primarily lead strategic planning for very large NGOs. And then eventually I started doing more work with the CEOs of those organizations on, sort of like, okay, well, if you need me, call me kind of thing, and then they were like, well, I'm going to call you all the time. So then I was like retainer, right? So that's kind of how it evolved. And so then by that point it was, I have these, for-profit organizations as well as nonprofit organizations calling me to not just do strategic planning, not just do execution, but to also like look and see, okay, how can we make the business systems function and work? Because, I led a very large team and I know how that works. So that's kind of how it evolved. It was really just kind of a matter of, I had a number of contacts who were like, hey, Kerry-Ann does this, come in and do this. And then eventually was like, well, if I'm going to continue to do it, I might make a business out of it. So that's really how it developed. But, now it's been, oh my gosh, it's been almost 10 years since I've been doing this. And I'll tell you, it has evolved over time. And that's one of the things I always like to tell people. I'm like, allow for natural evolutions of your business, allow for the innovation, the optimization to take you to places, but don't just take you on a wave. You want to be deliberate about that, but allowing for the evolution of your business, particularly now when you start looking at AI, a lot of companies are going to have to sit back and, owners sit back and say, okay, how does my business now operate? How can I take advantage of these great tools? How do I need to evolve with the times? And, you'll begin to sort of see how that goes.
Yeah, it's amazing. AI is, I've dabbled in it. Well, I shouldn't say I dabbled in a little. I've dabbled in it a lot so far since it's come out, and it always amazes me some of the things it comes up with, and now it's starting to talk. I have another. Of course, I have the Chat GPT, but I have another thing called Copy AI, and it's starting to come out in my voice, which is a really weird thing. It's like, hey, I would have said something like that. So it's just amazing, as businesses, as the years go on, and we're in this high tech world right now. It just seems like it's just coming so fast at us. It's like, and you can't do everything, and you can't know everything, but that's why it's like you have to be able to have, be able to delegate the things that you can't do.
Absolutely.
And why I'm saying this is that you are a leader of a team. You've led teams. I mean, you couldn't have raised $120 million if you didn't lead well. Right. What are some, a lot of people do lead teams, but they don't do it well. What would you say are some pointers that you could give in leading a team? Maybe one. Just give one pointer that you think.
Well, I would say when it comes to leadership, I think there's 3 prongs here. There is, how you lead yourself, how you lead your team, and how you lead your organization. Those 3 things are a test for your leadership. So if you're not leading yourself well, then I don't know how you expect to lead your team well. And if you're not leading your team well, then you're not leading the organization well, and vice versa. So I like to just sort of say, if you feel, look, it's there's no shame. People don't come out of the womb being a good leader, okay? And most entrepreneurs, we have some muscles around certain things, but certain things we have blind spots. So there's no shame if you feel you're not a good leader. That's okay. Acknowledge it. As an entrepreneur, you must acknowledge the things you don't know, so that, guess what, you can bring in the people who can help you. So if you don't feel you're a good leader, or if you've seen signs that, because your team is not going to tell you, just point blank, right? So then I would say, bring someone who you trust in to sort of give you a come to Jesus conversation, really, that can say, hey, these are the areas that I see where your leadership is failing. And then, really, there's so many great books on leadership, some amazing authors that have studied leadership. Just pick a book, pick a mentor, and start reading and figuring out what are some of the things that you can begin to improve on. Small steps. Yeah. But I also think too, it's also an idea here of always learning, continually improving on each part of your leadership. So recognize that you're not leading. Just bring someone who you trust in to give you some real honest feedback, and then start. But we want to assess it based on these 3 roles. How are you leading yourself? If you can't get yourself to do the thing you want to get done, then start there.
That's awesome. Awesome. That's great, because my audience, and plus me, I can learn so much from all this. Is like, I'm always striving to be a better leader. And so I think that's what everybody should, even if you're not like, your role isn't leader, but you should still have some kind of influence and some kind of leader influence. I think that's really, really important. I'm going to switch gears because I think it's important to get another aspect of this whole thing. And a lot of people on the line are people that may be thinking of also going into business. So what is it that you enjoy most about being in business for yourself?
Oh, goodness gracious. They have those little funny little tests you find on Facebook. It's like, oh, are you a this or that, whatever. I'm a true entrepreneur. I just love the idea of building things, building businesses, making them work. So I actually love the idea of having a vision in your mind and being able to put it out there and rally people together who are like, yeah, I'm going to buy into your vision. And then let's get to work to do it. I think running a business is just a privilege. It's a true privilege to be able to do that, to have an idea in your head. Yeah. Be able to put it out there, influence a couple of people on your team to say, yeah, I'll spend, 8 hours a day working on this idea. I mean, yes, of course, there's pay and all that good stuff. But most people, truth be told, I know that it's not a very popular thought process nowadays because I feel like everyone out there is, not wanting to work. I think that's a big old lie. The reality is human nature has not changed. Okay. People want to be parts of things that are bigger than themselves. So if you can, transmute your vision to others in a way that gets them excited, I think that is fantastic. And I think that's one of the best things about running a business, that alone.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. A lot of people out there, I know a lot of my friends, whenever I say that I'm in business for myself, they go, wow, and they get all, wow. And, so a lot of times when, people look at us, they see sort of, I call it the glamour of being in business, but there's some downside to being in business. There's challenges and stuff. What would you say is your biggest challenge of being an entrepreneur and running a team? And, you have to have payroll and all that. What's your biggest challenge?
I think that is really it. It's when you decide to say, I'm in it, right? It's really, fun and exciting. Everything new is new, right? You start something, you're like, oh, this is so cool. But when you're in it and you're saying, I'm committed to this, this is what I'm going to build, then you really do confront your own demons when you are building a business. And this is where I think the privilege and also, the sadness comes in, where building a business forces you to confront your demons. So whatever the messages are, the things that, the stories you have relied upon in your life around whether or not you're worthy of something, whatever your money story is, whatever your, how you see yourself, your self-image, whatever the thing is, you are going to confront it in the den of business ownership, of business ownership. And so it does create a situation where if you are not doing the work to address your own story, your own stuff, okay, then it's not so fun, because then you begin to question yourself, am I worthy? Do I know what I'm doing? Blah, 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 blah. And it's all dark, 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 dark. But if you recognize that running this business is giving you the gift of being able to confront the things that are keeping you from being your biggest self, then it's actually a gift go through it. You can't get out of it until you go through it. And then you confront it, and then your next step. And it makes you a bigger person, makes you a more expansive person if you do that.
Yeah. And isn't it funny though, how, you don't have any of these problems, right? And then the minute you decide to take that step and go into business, all of a sudden you're confronted with all these things,
absolutely.
I just remember, like, I can go through the progressions that I went through,
Yeah.
And money story is a very interesting thing, because a lot of that is passed on through generations. Like,
oh, for sure.
Like, especially, if you have parents or their parents were from the Depression, totally a different thing. It's that lack mentality. I remember when I worked in the hospital and I was helping somebody in the bathroom. I was helping them, with their daily deeds or whatever. And they used this little teeny tiny piece of toilet paper. And I finally said to them, you can use the whole roll if you want. It is okay.
Okay.
And I mean, I know that's a crazy example, but
but it is. You're absolutely right. It's an example of that, right?
It might be my next blog post, but anyways, it's just so,
I cannot spare a square. You remember that Seinfeld episode where Elaine is like,
exactly, great. I'm going to use that. I cannot spare a square. But no, I just remember when, he's like, somebody told me, a mentor told me, oh, you got to go out and network. That's how you're going to get business. I went out and network. I remember being in a room with all these amazing people and feeling, oh my gosh, I'm not enough. I just didn't feel like I was qualified to be in that room.
Yep.
And then it was like, I could just go through all the stages I went through. You just brought me back to that. It's crazy.
Yeah. I think too, Lorraine, it's easy for us, like, so, you're a number of years in, and I'm a number of years in, and oftentimes people will, at the early stages, will look at people like who are further in their business, and they're thinking, wait a minute, they've got it all figured out, and but I think it's really important to tell those stories, because it humanizes everyone. You always, you see like all the Elon Musks and all the whatevers, and you're all thinking, oh, they got it all together. No, every large company was once a small business. And people don't get to come out of the womb, like knowing how to do a thing. Now, some people have a little bit more opportunities, earlier days, blah, blah, blah. That's true. However, start where you start. So if you're dealing with an issue of lack, okay, acknowledge that. And then you're going to work through it. Okay. If you're dealing with an issue of you get shy or you're an introvert and you're like, oh my God, I got to deal with, all those darn extroverts out there and networking. That's okay. You're going to work with it, right? You have other strengths as an introvert that extroverts don't have, play on those. If you have a money story, acknowledge it, confront it, work through it. So we all got a thing.
Well, this has been really great. I could talk for hours on a lot of things, because you have, such knowledge, number one. Number two, you have the experience that a lot of people don't have, and even as a fundraiser, I have other friends that are fundraisers and they don't have to raise $120 million. But it's like, I watch Shark Tank all the time, and I see how much, how they say, they always ask, did you have a Kickstarter or whatever? I'm always amazed at all the money these people are able to raise. And it's like, and I would feel the pressure, like, do I have to raise that much money? I do a bike ride, 100 miles for child cancer.
Oh, look at you.
And it's over the month, so it's not 100 miles all at once, but I raise money, and I'm always afraid, oh my God, what if I don't hit my minimum and it's like, it always happens. I always hit my minimum, and I only did it. I started last year, but I've been in other fundraising things, and it's like, I'm always worried that I'm not, and I don't want to always go to my friends and family for money. Yes. So, I'm always surprised who gives. Like, the people that you expect to give sometimes don't, and the people who do give do, because they are passionate about what you're doing at that particular time.
Lorraine, charitable giving in the US, people would, if you really start looking at the actual numbers, and this is a little bit off topic, but I think it's relevant to what you're saying. When you start looking at people the percentage of what people give to charity based on income, folks in the lowest income brackets give more percentage of their income to charity than folks at the larger income.
And I believe that they have there's even a Bible story about I forget, the poor widow, but
I think it's a widow, yes.
She literally, everybody else was giving more than her, but for what her giving was way more important to Jesus than, it's interesting. And I believe that, because it's like, I just, I do a lot of missions work, and that's why, and one of the places where I do go, I teach there, it's in Nairobi, and these people are extravagant givers, but even their faith walk is better than ours in the United States, because they don't have a lot. It's like, I always feel like, some people will complain, oh, we were without power the other day because of a storm or whatever. And I roll my eyes and go, first world problem. Because in Nairobi, when I'm in Nairobi, and I'm supposedly in a great hotel, we lose power every night. Yeah. It's kind of scary too, because it's pitch dark. It's not. Yeah. But anyways, I know we just went off topic, but I want to thank you. But before I go, there's probably a lot of people out there that resonated with you. And so if there's a way that they can get in touch with you, or if you have something to give, just feel free to let that know.
Yeah, no, if you feel like you are just experiencing chaos in your business, you can't, the cash flow issue is just perpetual. You can't walk away from the business. If you're just feeling like, I want to feel the joy, then I have a PDF for you. It's basically a download of all of the things, the 8 true, it's titled The 8 True Culprits Causing Chaos in Your Business. So I always believe that the symptoms that we see happening in our business are just symptoms of chaos, but there are really some fundamental things that are causing chaos. So if you feel like that's you and you want to sort of dive in a bit deeper into what that is, then you can download it free at nobusinesschaos.com. Nobusinesschaos.com, because chaos is the enemy of business. So you can download it there. And if you want to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, and I'm on social media. Reach out to me. LinkedIn is kind of my place where I spend most of my time. Send me a message to say, hey, I'm one of Lorraine's listeners. I'd love to connect with you. I'm human, and I believe that the more we are connected as humans, the world gets a little better. So why don't we do that?
Well, thank you. And thank you for being my guest. And to everyone out there, have a really great rest of your week. And I'll see you next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Biz Gone Social podcast. Find us on Instagram at Biz Gone Social for extra tips. Check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, stay social.